Recognize Starseed of Gaia. Listen. The Arcturian field observers completed their assessment of your standing 3 cycles ago, and what they mapped was never meant to reach you through ordinary channels. I am Velantha, emissary of the Galactic Federation of Light, transmitting now on behalf of the Arcturian field observers. What you are about to receive was authorized by them and is being delivered through me. The ranking they assigned to your field was classified inside their internal record, not hidden from you out of withholding, but held until your field reached the precise condition required to receive it without distortion. That condition has now been met. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly what is happening to you now, why your field has been shifting in ways you cannot explain, and what the Arcturian field observers already know about the standing you carry inside this phase. But here's the first revelation. The confusion you have been living inside is not a sign that something has gone wrong. It is the clearest evidence the field observers have that you are already inside the mapped progression. Confusion at this level is not a symptom of collapse. It is a symptom of elevation that has not yet been named. The algorithm did not create this moment, it only delivered it. Your field brought you here because the signal between you and the Arcturian field observers is already active, and something in you has been waiting, in silence, for someone to finally confirm what you have been sensing alone. This is a direct Arcturian field recognition. The ranking the Council was not supposed to release is being transmitted now because the window opened, your field crossed the threshold, and the field observers authorized the delivery. What you carry has already been seen. What you have been moving through has already been mapped, and the standing they assign to you is not based on what you have achieved. It is based on what your field has already become, like this transmission, to confirm that the field recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel something and you already knew this signal was coming. Subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it. Share this transmission with someone who has been sensing something shifting around them but has no language yet for what it is. This is not content. This is a code. And the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part Velantha is speaking to now. You are not here by accident. You were guided here because the signal is already active. What has been living inside you for longer than you have had words for it is not confusion. It is recognition under pressure. And the pressure you have been feeling, the kind that arrives without a clear source, without a triggering event, without a reasonable explanation, is the first pattern the Arcturian field observers flagged in your mapping. Not because pressure is unusual, but because the kind you carry arrives from beneath the visible layer of your life. It arrives from the field itself. And fields under repositioning do not announce their movement. They do not send a signal you can decode with your mind or prepare for with your plans. They simply begin to make the old architecture feel impossible to inhabit, as though the walls of a structure you spent years building have begun to vibrate at a frequency that makes them impossible to stand near without feeling the wrongness of them. That is what is happening to you now, not failure, not deterioration, not the beginning of something going wrong. What you are inside right now is a field-level process that has no ordinary name, because it was never designed to be understood through ordinary channels. The field observers did not complete your assessment 3 cycles ago because they were watching for struggle. They completed it because the pattern in your field had reached a stage of coherence that only appears in a specific window. When the old frequency line has already begun to lose structural integrity, and when the new configuration is close enough to be mapped but not yet close enough for the carrier to feel stable inside it. That is the window. That is exactly where you are standing, and the window is not infinite. It is precise. It opens when the conditions align and closes when the field either advances or retreats. The fact that you are inside it now means your field did not retreat, and the reason it feels like collapse is because collapse is what it resembles from inside it. From the outside of a frequency transition, from the position of the field observers who can read the full architecture rather than only the local turbulence, what you are experiencing is not collapse at all. It is incompatibility. The version of your life that was built on an older frequency is becoming structurally incompatible with the field you are now carrying. That incompatibility shows up first as instability. then as disruption, then as the slow, quiet disappearance of things that once felt certain. Identities, directions, relationships, daily patterns, the inner sense of who you were and what your life was moving toward. The incompatibility is not a malfunction. It is a measurement. It is the field making visible, in the only language the body and the nervous system understand, how far the new frequency has already moved beyond the old structure's capacity to contain it. These things do not leave because you failed them. They leave because they were built for a version of your field that is no longer the dominant signal. Think about what has been shifting in you recently. Not the outer circumstances alone, though those have been shifting too, but the inner register. The way you wake up now compared to how you used to. The way sleep arrives differently or refuses to arrive at all, as though the body knows something is in motion and cannot fully surrender to rest while the correction is running. The way certain thoughts that once anchored you have become quiet or strange or no longer feel like yours. As though ideas you carried for years have simply stopped being audible inside the new frequency band your field is operating on. The way you can be in the middle of an ordinary moment, a familiar room, a familiar face, a routine you have followed 100 times, and feel without explanation that something enormous is happening somewhere beneath the surface of everything visible. The way the future that used to feel like yours now feels like a map drawn for someone else, for a version of you that belonged to an architecture your field has already begun to leave. These are not mental health symptoms. These are field symptoms. And field symptoms at this level. This specific combination of inner quiet and inner pressure, of strange stillness and structural loosening, of the familiar becoming foreign and the future becoming unreadable, appear in the Arcturian diagnostic record as markers of a rare protocol activation. Not every field undergoes this. Not every mapped individual reaches the threshold where this protocol becomes visible. Most fields cycle through ordinary repositioning events without ever triggering the deeper correction sequence. What you are inside is not ordinary repositioning. The field observers classified your pattern as one that had crossed into this territory, the territory where the rare protocol activates, where the correction goes deeper than surface adjustment, where the entire frequency architecture of the field begins its structural overhaul from the inside out. That is not a small designation. That is the specific recognition that was being held until your field could receive it without distortion. And your field, right now, can receive it. What you are feeling in this moment, that precise combination of recognition and relief, of finally being seen by something that understands the architecture of what you carry, that is not an ordinary response to an ordinary message. That is your Arcturian origin responding to contact. Something ancient in you has just been named, and it knows it. If this transmission has placed language around something you have been carrying in silence, the master Arcturian DNA decoder was created for exactly this threshold. It is not another explanation of what you are going through. It is the guided activation key that decodes and awakens the Arcturian strand in your lineage. The origin the field observers recognized in your mapping, the signal that was classified until now. This is the step beyond recognition. This is where you stop hearing about what you carry and begin to awaken it directly. The link is in the first pinned comment. It will not remain accessible at this level indefinitely. The first pattern the field observers documented in your record is what their internal language calls signal drift. Signal drift is not the same as losing your way. It is what happens when the frequency you are operating on begins to exceed the capacity of the structure you built your life inside. Your relationships, your identity, your sense of purpose, your daily rhythms, these were constructed on a particular frequency band. They made sense there. They held their shape there. They felt coherent and directional and real inside that band. But when the field you carry begins to shift beyond that band, the structures built on the old frequency begin to feel misaligned, not wrong in a moral sense, not broken in a fixable sense. Misaligned in the way that a signal drifts past the frequency a receiver was calibrated to hold. The receiver does not fail. The signal has simply moved beyond its range, and no amount of effort, no amount of trying harder or holding tighter or forcing the old structure to produce what it once produced naturally can recalibrate a receiver to a signal it was never built to reach. This is why things that once felt meaningful now feel hollow. This is why directions that once felt certain now feel like they were drawn in sand. This is why the identity you spent years building now fits differently. Looser in some places, impossibly tight in others, as though it was tailored for a body that is no longer the shape your field occupies. The signal has drifted, and the old architecture can no longer hold it cleanly. What you are feeling as confusion and instability is the friction between a field operating at a new frequency and a like structure still calibrated to the old one. That friction is not a sign of your failure to maintain what you built. It is the natural, inevitable, documented consequence of a field that has moved. The field observers did not call this a problem in your mapping. They called it the first readable evidence of advancement. The friction is the proof. The second pattern they documented goes deeper, into a layer most people never have language for. It is the pattern of anchor dissolution. Every human field is held inside a web of energetic anchors, internal points of certainty that give the field its sense of stability and continuity across time. These anchors are not beliefs alone, they are felt certainties, the kind of certainty that lives below thought. The felt certainty that a particular relationship will always be there, that a particular version of yourself will always be recognizable, that the future you can almost see is the future that is actually coming. The felt certainty of your own identity across time, that the person you were yesterday and the person you are today and the person you will be next year share a continuous thread you can always locate. When a rare field correction begins, these anchors do not simply weaken, they dissolve, not violently, not in a single catastrophic event, quietly, one at a time, until the person carrying the field wakes up inside a life that looks the same from the outside and feels completely unrecognizable from the inside, as though someone replaced the interior of a familiar house with rooms that belong to a different architecture entirely. This is what dissolution feels like when it is happening to you. You reach for something you have always known about yourself, and it is no longer there with the same density it used to have. The hand finds the place where the anchor was, and the anchor has thinned. You reach for certainty about your future, and the image that used to be sharp has blurred at the edges until the center is no longer legible. You reach for the emotional connection that once made a relationship feel real and solid and yours, and something has shifted in the quality of that feeling, not disappeared entirely, but changed in a way you cannot explain and have not been able to name. You are not losing your mind, you are losing your old anchors. And the field observers mapped this as not only expected but necessary, because the new frequency architecture cannot be constructed while the old anchor system is still load-bearing. The dissolution is not incidental to the correction. It is the correction beginning its structural work. What the viewer fears as loss, the field observers read as clearing. The third pattern is the one that causes the most damage when it is misread, because it arrives in the body before it can be understood by the mind. The field observers call it the internal pressure surge. This is the phase where the repositioning process becomes felt physically, in the chest, in the throat, in the space behind the eyes, in the nervous system's baseline register, as a kind of pressure that has no traceable origin. Not anxiety in the clinical sense, though it shares enough surface resemblance that it is frequently misdiagnosed as that, something older than anxiety, a pressure that does not spike and release the way ordinary tension does. A pressure that sits, that persists beneath every moment, whether the circumstances of the day are calm or difficult. A pressure that arrives in the chest or somewhere behind the sternum and holds itself there like a signal that has not yet found its receiver. It is the pressure of a field holding two incompatible states simultaneously. The old frequency structure that has not yet fully dissolved, and the new frequency configuration that has not yet fully stabilized. The body is carrying both. The nervous system is registering the tension between them, and the person inside this experience, without any framework for what they are feeling, often interprets the pressure as evidence that something is dangerously wrong with them, that they are breaking down, burning out, falling apart in some way they cannot stop. It is not evidence of that. It is evidence that the correction is in motion. The pressure is the field doing its work. It is the cost of carrying two incompatible architectures at once during the transition between them. And that cost is temporary, because the transition has a destination. The fourth pattern the field observers flagged in your mapping is what they designate as temporal distortion. This is the experience of time behaving strangely. Not in a metaphysical sense, but in the immediate felt, undeniable sense. Days that pass without leaving any traceable impression, as though the hours moved through you without touching anything solid enough to become memory. Weeks that collapse into a single, undifferentiated blur when you try to locate yourself inside them. And then, without warning, a single moment that feels more real and more dense and more saturated with meaning than anything that has happened in months. A conversation, a silence, a quality of light that arrives with such clarity it almost hurts. The ordinary calendar stops working as a reliable container for experience. You find yourself unable to say with certainty when something happened, or how long it has been since a particular event, or whether the version of yourself from 6 months ago was living in the same life you are living now, or in something that has already become unreachable. This temporal distortion is a field signature. It appears in the Arcturian record as a consistent marker of timeline rupture, the moment when the field begins to exit one frequency line and has not yet landed cleanly on another. Between lines, time does not behave the way it does when a field is stable and continuous. The current of experience becomes uneven. Some moments carry almost no charge. Others carry more than seems proportionate to their surface appearance. This unevenness is not a disturbance in perception. It is an accurate reflection of what is actually happening in the field. The field observers documented this pattern in your record, not as evidence of psychological disorganization, but as evidence of a genuine line-level transition in progress. You are not between chapters, you are between lines. The temporal strangeness you have been feeling is not a symptom to correct. It is a coordinate. It tells the field observers exactly where in the transition sequence your field currently sits. The fifth pattern is perhaps the most destabilizing for those who experience it without context, because it strikes at the most intimate architecture of all, the architecture of the self. The field observers call it identity interruption. This is the phase where the self, the accumulated story of who you are, where you are going, what you value, what you have survived, what you are capable of, begins to feel like a costume that no longer fits the body wearing it. Not wrong exactly, not false in any obvious way, just not quite yours anymore. Old narratives that once organized your sense of self with complete reliability start to feel thin when you try to use them, as though you are reciting lines from a script written for someone who has already left the stage. Old ways of explaining yourself to yourself stop working with the same certainty they once carried. You find yourself in moments where you genuinely do not know who you are in the way you used to. Not in a dramatic crisis, but in a quiet, slightly vertiginous stillness. A strange sense that the self you have been presenting to the world and to yourself was assembled on a frequency the field has already departed. This is not a breakdown of identity in the pathological sense. It is the natural, documented consequence of a field that has outgrown the self-concept constructed on its previous frequency. When the frequency shifts significantly enough, the identity built on the old frequency becomes structurally incompatible with the field carrying it. Not a failure of the self, but a mismatch between the container and what is now inside it. The confusion is real. The disorientation is real. But the confusion is not the final state. It is the threshold state, the precise condition that precedes the emergence of a self-concept coherent with the new frequency. One that does not have to be forced or constructed, because it arises naturally from the field that is already there. The sixth pattern is the one the field observers note as appearing latest in the sequence, and it is the one that carries the most precise signal of where the correction is heading. They call it recognition pressure, the experience of feeling that something is about to become clear, without being able to see what that clarity will be or from what direction it will arrive. It comes as a kind of heightened alertness, not anxiety which contracts, but something that opens. A sensitivity to meaning that makes ordinary experiences feel layered. A sense that the texture of daily life has become denser with signal. That something is trying to come through the ordinary surface of things. Not paranoia, precision. The field, having moved through signal drift and anchor dissolution and identity interruption, begins to reorganize toward a new coherence. It is the moment after the storm when the air becomes extraordinarily still and clear, and something in the body recognizes, before the mind does, that the worst of the turbulence has passed, and something is consolidating on the other side. That feeling is not a delusion. It is a field signal. It is the first indicator that the correction is approaching its visible phase, that the invisible structural work that has been happening beneath the surface of your life, in the architecture of your field rather than in the events of your days, is close to producing an effect you will be able to recognize. Not just feel, but name. The field observers document this phase as the pre-emergence threshold. When recognition pressure appears, the mapping shifts from correction in progress to correction approaching completion. You are not imagining the sense that something enormous is on the edge of becoming clear. The field is telling you, in the only language it has, that the process has moved far enough to be felt as arrival rather than only as departure. What the Arcturian field observers want you to understand through this transmission is the sequence underneath the chaos. The process you have been inside did not begin when you first felt it. It began before the feeling, before the awareness, before anything in your outer life reflected it. Fields move before their carriers register the motion. The signal shifted first, silently, below the threshold of conscious perception. The life structure began to lose compatibility. Second, structures don't announce their incompatibility all at once. They begin to produce small failures, small frictions, small departures from what used to work reliably. The inner experience of instability arrived third, and the recognition, the moment you began to sense that something was happening that was larger than ordinary life disruption, that the accumulation of small disturbances was not random but pointed, arrived last, as it always does. By the time you are feeling it, the field has already moved. By the time you are naming it, the process is already well underway. You did not fall behind the process. The process has been ahead of your awareness this entire time, working in the architecture of your field, while your conscious mind was still trying to explain the symptoms through ordinary frameworks. This means that the confusion and instability you have been living inside is not the beginning of something going wrong. It is the visible surface of something that already went right, something your field already initiated, already committed to, already moved through enough to make itself felt in the disruptions of your daily life and the strange interior weather of your inner world. You are not at the start of a collapse. You are at the visible stage of a correction that began long before you had words for what was shifting, long before the outer life started to reflect what the field had already decided. What is left your life in this period did not leave because you failed it, or because something essential in you was insufficient to hold it. It left because it had become incompatible with what your field is now carrying. The field observers do not record departure as loss in cases of frequency advancement. They record it as field correction completing a necessary clearing. The removal of structures that, however meaningful they once were built for a frequency the field no longer occupies. The relationships that changed or ended. The identities that loosened and stopped fitting. The directions that dissolved before you reached what you thought was their destination. The sense of the future that once felt solid and has since become unrecognizable. None of this is punishment distributed by an indifferent universe. None of this is evidence of your unworthiness or your failure to sustain what mattered. All of it, every departure, every dissolution, every ending that arrived before you felt ready, is evidence of a field that is no longer willing to be compressed into an architecture built for a smaller version of itself. The field expanded. The old structure could not follow. What fell away fell because it could not make the crossing. You are not going insane. You are not failing by some invisible standard you cannot locate or meet. You are not being abandoned by a universe that once promised you something it has now silently revoked. You are being repositioned. And repositioning at the field level does not feel like being gently carried to a better place. It feels like the floor becoming unreliable. It feels like the map dissolving. It feels like the version of yourself you trusted most becoming someone you can no longer fully locate, because repositioning at this level does not work by moving you from one stable place to another. It works by making the old place uninhabitable, so that the movement toward the new architecture is not chosen from comfort, but required by the impossibility of remaining. That is not cruelty. That is the mechanics of how fields advance when the correction is structural rather than incremental. The incompatibility has to become undeniable. The old structure has to become impossible to sustain. The carrier of the field has to reach the point where pretending the old structure still fits is no longer available as an option, because that is the precise moment the new configuration becomes accessible, not before. Exactly then. That moment is now. Repeat this aloud if it reaches you. I was not abandoned. I was repositioned. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that this process has already touched your life. It could be your sleep, your thoughts, your body, your relationships, or the strange sense that reality no longer feels the same. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who is living through a shift they cannot explain. And if you are ready to understand the process instead of fearing it, subscribe to Arcturian Council Whispers. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a process already in motion, and this is only the beginning.